I think a lot of people like to look at warming up as optional because it's not as exciting as lifting the actual weights. And I agree with you entirely. It's boring, it's dull. Sometimes I'm just going through the movements, but without going through these movements, I'm not going to be able to do the workout as well as I want to. What is up, everybody? Coach Juma here, and today we're going to be breaking down the best way to warm up for your lifts. So we all want to lift heavy because it's going to help us get the most out of our bodies. It's going to improve our joint health. It is going to minimize the amount of fat on our body, improve our metabolisms, help us build more muscle, and just feel better, stronger, and more confident overall. But if you're not warming up properly to get to that main lift, you're setting yourself up for injury, if not immediately now, somewhere down the line, or putting yourself in a position where you're going to have nagging shoulder aches, elbow aches, wrist pains. A lot of people experience this, and it's normal to experience, but that doesn't mean it's right to experience. You don't have to go through your day-to-day life as a casual lifter, as a hobby bodybuilder, or whatever you do, feeling aches and pains all the time. It's not something you should be expecting. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down why warming up is important, the worst ways to warm up, and what you should be doing instead. We're going to give you a couple options for that, and you choose what's going to be working best for you. If you go to the gym and you survey 10 people, odds are a good number of them are going to have some sort of low back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, or wrist pain. That is very common to experience, but it doesn't have to be that way. 9 out of 10 times, all of those injuries can be prevented with a proper warm up and mobility phase. Now, we're not going to go through mobility because I put that in a separate video that you could check out here, but we're going to break down how to warm up your body to lift more effectively and on your main lift for the day. So the reason you want to warm up and actually get your body through what I like to call the priming and activation phase is so that your body can be ready to do the most that it could possibly do during your training session. I always like to make the analogy that the warm-up phase is basically setting up amps on your speaker. Now, you could listen to stuff through a speaker without connecting it to an amp, but it's not going to be as good quality. The sound is going to be missing something, and it's not going to be the same experience as it would with an amp. In this situation, the priming and activation aspect of your training is the amp. So without the amp, you could still listen to music, but you're not getting the full experience that you can. Something is always lacking. And it's the same thing with your training. You could technically do your workout without the warming up part of it, but you're always going to be missing something. You're always going to be leaving results on the table every time you work out if you're not doing your warm up. In this situation, your central nervous system is actually the amp. This is what's going to help connect your brain to your muscles to help you move as effectively as possible, as explosively as possible, and use your muscles to the fullest potential. You want to get your central nervous system amped up and ready to lift heavy weights, because otherwise you're not going to be able to lift as heavy as you can. You're going to put yourself in a position where your joints aren't going to be ready for movement. I think a lot of people like to look at warming up as optional because it's not as exciting as lifting the actual weights. And I agree with you entirely. It's boring, it's dull. Sometimes I'm just going through the movements, but without going through these movements, I'm not going to be able to do the workout as well as I want to. You have to recognize that this isn't separate from your training. This is a part of your training just as much as squatting, benching, and deadlifting is too. There's a couple ways that you can amp up your central nervous system to get ready to lift the heavy weights and perform well in the gym. But before going into the right ways to do it, I want to share some wrong ways that are very common for people to do. Here's a couple ways some people like to warm up that isn't quite as effective as it could be. Person one, they go into the gym, they warm up, they move their joints around, they're about to bench, they do the rotator cuff thing, where they rotate their arm in and out with a little 2.5 dumbbell, maybe move their shoulders around just to loosen up, and then they get into their compound movement, their bench, their overhead press, or whatever else they're going to do. It's cool, it's not bad, you're getting your joints moving, you're getting them ready to work out, but you're leaving a lot on the table because your joints are only a part of this. Your central nervous system isn't amped up, your muscles aren't primed and ready to go or warmed up for the movement because you haven't loaded your muscles yet. So you won't be ready to lift the big weights you want to lift in that training session because you're only warming up your joints. Person two walks in, throws their bag next to the squat rack, chugs a bang that they just bought at the front counter, does 15 warm-up sets for their squats before ultimately doing 3 actual working sets. They didn't go through a warm-up, they just went right into the compound movement, started adding weight slowly over time, and then getting into their actual training set. They didn't have a warm-up, which isn't smart. They didn't prime their central nervous system, also not smart. And they fatigued themselves early before getting to the max weight, which limits how much weight you could lift later on too. So a lot of flaws here, but at least they were cautious, started ramping up the weight, put themselves in a position before going into the heavyweights, so I'll give them that. Person three, the worst of them all, they're super busy. They just parked their car outside, ran to the gym, straight to the squat rack, and put on the heaviest load they can because they don't think they need to warm up. They're too good to warm up, and they're a seasoned veteran in the gym, so they don't have to do any of that. Now, the third one's obviously the worst one. definitely the highest risk of injury by far. The first two, not too bad, could be a lot worse, but it's not getting the most out of the workout as it can be. So what does a proper priming, activation, and ramp up look like for your training? Before getting started with your main compound lift of the day, it's important to take the joints and muscles that are going to be worked through an explosive activity to get your heart rate up, get blood flowing, rise your core temperature, and amp up your central nervous system. The explosiveness is key here in doing that. Some example priming exercises for the most common compound lifts are going to be for bench press, speed bench press. So benching a light amount of weight for 3 to 5 reps as fast as you can, or plyo push-ups, or chest ball medicine throws. They get you going through that movement pattern as explosively as you can. For squats, you can do squat jumps or weighted squat jumps. This one is pretty easy, but you're going down in the squat as low as you can and exploding up off the ground as high as you can and then landing in the squat. Again, similar movement pattern. You're doing a squat, but you're doing it as explosively as possible. For deadlifts, this is a hip hinge movement. So explosive hip hinging movements include kettlebell swings and broad jumps. These are going to help you get through that movement pattern, again, as explosively as possible. Really fire up your glutes, hamstrings, and core to help you get ready to deadlift some heavy weight. And lastly, for overhead press, the two I like to go to the most are the kneeling push press and wall balls if you have a place to do wall balls in your gym. But really, any exercise that gets you explosive, gets you pushing as hard as you can, and helps you get your heart rate up, move through the movement pattern explosively is going to be effective here. Now, going into the next part, which is actually doing the ramp up of your training program. If you're gonna go in and bench 200 pounds that day, you never start with putting 200 pounds on the bar. That's not smart. You need to slowly ease into it. But the way people ease into it is pretty off most of the time. Let's say again, you're trying to get to 200 pounds. The average person will likely start at 100 pounds for 15 reps, add another 20 pounds, do it for 12 reps, add another 20 pounds, do it for 10 reps, another 20 pounds, do it for 8 reps. And then finally, they're doing their 3 sets of 6 at 200 pounds, 4 sets later, and also after doing 30 plus reps. So at this point, you've already fatigued yourself to a degree where you won't be able to perform the exercise to your fullest capacity. Instead, you want to slowly increase weight, but as you're increasing weight, you want to decrease reps. You just want to get your body used to lifting the heavier load. You don't need to rep it out and tire yourself out before getting to that point. So to build to the top set properly, maybe instead you do the same weights as I mentioned before, 100, 120, 140, 160 pounds, but you do 8 to 10 reps, 5 to 6 reps, 2 to 3 reps, 1 to 2 reps, and then do your 200 pounds at 6 to 8 reps. That's going to be much more effective for you. You're not going to tire yourself out. You'll be able to do the actual top sets as effectively as you can. You'll be able to do the top sets to your fullest potential and get more out of your workout that way. So recapping the right and wrong ways to do a workout: don't do 5+ sets of warming up, slowly adding weight and keeping the reps really high. That's not going to help you. Don't only work on your joint mobility. That's not going to help you. Don't jump into the gym, get under the bar and start pushing as much weight as you can. That's not going to help you either. Go through as many mobility exercises as you need to loosen up and get the joints working. Then do a priming exercise that is explosive, similar to the movement pattern that you're going to be doing for that day. And then when doing the ramp up sets, just do a few sets, slowly increasing the weight, but decreasing the reps as you go up. You don't want to fatigue yourself before getting to the top sets and getting yourself tired before you can actually do the most important part of your workout. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully now you see the more effective way to warm up for your training. And if you try it out, let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments. Make sure to subscribe because we're putting out new videos every weekday. And until next time, stay stupid.